I have a nice pair of Stanley number 4s. One of them is probably a pre-1900 604 Bedrock, and the other is a little bit later Stanley number 4. I'm going to take a few moments and compare the two of them. Now, if you just take Stanley's word for it, this is what they say in their advertising. For fine work on hard and knotty wood, this plane surpasses all others. The cutter, frog, and bottom are so machined and fitted that they are practically one solid piece of metal, thus preventing any chance of vibration. I would say this is the singular difference between a Stanley Bedrock and a regular Stanley. They go on to say the frog travels in a groove, ensuring it being square with the mouth of the plane and preventing shifting or wobbling. This is true, I'll show you in a minute. The width of the mouth can be regulated by use of a screwdriver as shown in the cut, without removing the cutter and lever. I'll show you that as well. The cutters are made of the best English steel and are adjustable both endwise and sidewise. The shape of the sides, a distinctive feature, adds greatly to the strength of the plane. I'll comment on that too. The handles and knobs are of rosewood and finely finished. I started off by weighing the planes. Here is the Bedrock. It weighed in at 3 pounds 2 ounces. And you'll see, I'll explain that in a minute, it actually ends up being lighter than the number 4, but I think this older style was made a little bit thinner on the sides. I've got an image of that later. Here's the Stanley number 4, and it comes in at 3 pounds 7.6 ounces, so it's a little bit heavier than the Bedrock. However, I think a newer Bedrock would have been probably about the same weight as the old one. The main difference in these two, I think that main difference in the weight could be attributed to the thickness of the sides. You can see here the difference between the old Bedrock and the newer number 4. The main difference in these two planes is kind of as Stanley's propaganda said, the mating surface. You can see on the number 4, the frog meets on those 4 pads of space, and in the Bedrock it meets on that entire milled surface. Here's more of a close-up of the number 4. Again, the frog rests on those 4 locations. On the number 604, that entire surface is milled flat, and you can see the grooves left and right. And here's the entire surface of the bottom of the frog with little channels left and right that allow the frog to move super parallel to the body. Now I'm going to just open up the number 4 and just take a look at the way that frog moves and how that frog is adjusted. I'll just unloosen these screws and then show you that mating surface on the number 4. Again, it just meets at those 2 locations in the front and that one across the back. There's the 4 mating surfaces. There's the adjuster screw there that adjusts the opening of the mouth, and I'll put this back on and show that adjustment moving the frog. And what you'll see here as you notice this is, though the frog moves forward and backward easily with that adjuster screw, you will notice one thing about these frogs on the regular number 4, and that is they jiggle. They wobble left and right. You can see the movement there I'm getting. And it's a small thing. If you're careful when you tighten it down, obviously you'll get that straight, but it is a small thing that makes the Bedrock, I think, a better mating surface, and definitely better in the adjustability, in that you don't have to pay attention to that sideways movement. Now I'll open up the number 604 and show you the difference here as I run that frog up and down using the adjuster screw. And you'll see that it moves perfectly parallel with the mouth. It's pretty hard to see, but you can see it's moving absolutely parallel with the mouth. There's no jiggling side by side, even though I'm putting some pressure on it. I'll pull this frog off now and again show you those mating surfaces. And you'll see that it's just, it's quite a bit different. You've got that entire flat surface there. You can see that's a milled surface. Those grooves are also milled in each side of the frog. And then again, that's a milled surface with those little channels milled on each side of the body. It does allow the frog to move forward and backwards parallel with the body, and there is no side-to-side movement in that frog. Again, Stanley's propaganda is maybe true, that it is as if the frog is pretty much at one part with the body. This was an old Stanley 604 in that it's a 1900, maybe even pre-1900, in that it had the old casting mark. Now in 1912 they improved that frog attachment in that they allowed you to move the frog without having to remove the blade and lever cap by use of a couple of screws and some pins. Here's a later model 603. It's a number 3 Bedrock, and it's at least post-1912, and you'll see that instead of screws holding that frog down, there are a pair of pins, and those pins have holes in them so that you can put those screws in from the back side, and those then, because of a concentric hole in the side of those pins, it causes the frog to be tightened from the rear instead of straight down. What that allows you to do is, with the blade and lever cap still mounted, you can loosen those 2 screws left and right, and then use the center adjusting screw and move the mouth adjustment of the plane without having to remove the blade. The contact area is the same as that old Bedrock, and it does allow for the, so to speak, for the frog and the body to sort of act like they're one continuous piece of steel. So here I'm putting those pins back in. You can see the marks in those, the little concentric holes in those. And as you tighten these 2 screws down, left and right, it cinches the frog down onto the body of the plane. And then I'm just going to reassemble this plane. I'll probably do a video on this number 3 in a few weeks. It is my favorite plane, actually. So here, just looking at these 2 planes, what else is different about these 2? You can see the lever cap is the old style Bedrock lever cap on the number 604. On the number 4, it's obviously a newer lever cap with nickel plating. Another thing that's kind of distinctive about these 2 is the low knob versus the high knob. Remember that knob? That was after 1912. They went to a higher knob. This older number 604 has got the old short knob. Also, the adjusting wheel, after 1922, they went to that larger wheel, which I have to say I like better. It gives you a little more leverage when you're adjusting the blade, but just to keep the old 604 authentic, I kept all the original parts. And then here's the lever caps again. You can see this vintage Stanley Bedrock lever cap on the 604, again 1900 or older, and a newer, at least post 1920 something, number 4. So those are really the main differences between these 2 in my collection. And now I'm going to use them both and maybe give you final comments. Here I've got just a piece of wood. I'm using the number 4 right now, just running some planing down the edge of that board. Just to, I didn't show you a super detailed comparison. I've used both these planes plenty to know what I think of them and how they act. I can tell you that here's a number 4. Like any plane, I guess I'll say it again and again, the most important thing with a plane, in my opinion, is sharpness. The plane is sharp, I mean scary sharp. I'm not so sure the design of the plane has a whole lot to do with it. Now maybe on super stubborn wood or a super stubborn grain, that might be the case, but you can see I'm getting very nice, very even, paper thin shavings using that number 4 plane. And here now is the 604 Bedrock. Same piece of wood, same everything. And once I get that blade adjusted to the right adjustment, I'm taking off very, very similar shavings with the number 4 or with the number 604 as I got out of the number 4. I started this video by saying, is the Bedrock better? And honestly, if I closed my eyes and it weren't for the high knob versus the low knob, I wouldn't know which one of these planes I was using. They feel the same, they weigh the same, they work the same, they act the same. I'm not sure you can justify the cost of a Bedrock plane. If you go on eBay, for instance, and look at these two planes, you can pick up a number 4, Stanley number 4, probably in the $20 range, 25, maybe 40 at the max. If you look for a 604, you're going to be paying $150 to $250. Is the 604 5 to 10 times better than the number 4? I would have to say I would be hard-pressed to make that argument. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please subscribe, and thank you for watching.